Oh boy. What's up, y'all? We're giving it a minute to marinate here. As best we can. What a freaking disaster of a game. We're not going to be on here too long tonight because I just recorded and it was just a later start time for me. So we'll get this thing up and running in just a second. Let me try to tweet this out. What's good? Oh my god. All right, y'all. I think we can get started and have some fun. Maybe we'll have fun. I don't know if we can call this fun. My gosh. What a freaking disaster. And to be honest, it wasn't that big of a disaster. I just said this as I recorded. I don't know which I prefer. If I prefer the Panthers to get blown out like every single game, or for the Panthers to remain competitive and actually be in a few of the games and then lose. I don't know. I mean, for the sake of where we are, I don't know that it even matters because no matter how many points we put up on the offensive side of the ball, Carolina Panthers defense is not going to make a stop. I will tell you this, and I know I tweeted, like to get a little emotional. I don't cuss or anything, but when I was on there, I did feel like earlier, and maybe it's fair, maybe it's not fair, that this loss in particular was on partially on the offense to an extent, and I'll explain why. Defense is bad, but I think when you look at the state of the defense, I try to put it under, and maybe this is fair, maybe it's not fair. I like to put it under a microscope or a lens, sunglasses, whatever you want to call it, something that kind of blocks off a little bit and say, well, this Carolina Panthers defense, if we look at who is starting and or the rotation of guys, it's hard to imagine that half of these guys would even start elsewhere. I mean, we're talking a lot of second string. We are talking practice squad guys. Folks, Marquise Haynes was not on an NFL roster and gets signed. And this, I'm not knocking him, and I'm not knocking Shaq Lawson or any of these other guys that we're bringing over to the practice squad. But that's where the Panthers are right now. And so from the starting defense, Shy Tuttle Ashawn Robinson. So those guys coming into this year were going to be our starters. But then you throw in Charles Harris. I don't know what he's been doing. I really don't. You have Trevin Wallace, the rookie, and I'm good with Trevin getting some reps, calling the defense. I think not to look far into the future, but I think there's a really good chance if Shaq doesn't come back that he could be leading the defense. You know, you have Josie Jewell who's out. But so you have Trevin Wallace, Claude and Cherilus, and it's not a knock on Claude and Cherilus either, but I mean, is he a second? You're really, when you talk about second string, you're honestly talking about scout team, the scout team defense. DJ Johnson, who has been underperforming, underwhelming, everything that could be. JC Horn, who is playing his best football. I mean, one, because he's healthy, but his best football, the football that everyone's like, oh, this is the version of JC Horn that we expected. And I heard him in the post game talking about really how the defense is letting down the offense. It hasn't been like this in years past. We haven't had an offense that could score points. And now we have an offense that can score. And things just aren't working. But JC Horn, Troy Hill, Mike Jackson, Xavier Woods, and Nick Scott. And you can make excuses. We can do it. I think Horn said that, you know, it's not, you can't blame the scheme. I started the podcast episode by saying a change is going to come, and maybe if you go out and listen to it once it's available, you'll hear my terrible singing. But a change is going to come, and I don't know if it's going to happen now. And I do think Canales is smart enough to realize, like, there's only so much Evero can do. But at the same time, 200 rushing yards on the ground. Almost 200. It's right at the border. I think it was like 105 and 95. So that was what? That's 200 yards, close to 200 yards. I think they netted out to like a 195 or whatever it was. It doesn't matter. Close to 200 yards on the ground from a team that was averaging right around 100, a little less than 100 yards per game. Now, Kirk Cousins slinging the ball around, throwing it for 400, 500 yards. You don't have to run it as much. It's just not acceptable. And it's not, the defense is bad. But you watch the defense, and they are letting running backs get 5 yards down the field before you even make contact. And a lot of times the first contact that is happening for some of these guys is them bumping into their own lineman blocking. That's how far out they are. It's bad, man. It's nowhere near Panthers football of old. I don't know where the optimism comes from. I do think, like, you're looking at this team, man. 1-5. We are officially a third of the way through, over a third of the way, whatever the math is. I'm just rounding up to 18 games. No, it's 17. But you're 1-5. You are on the path to win maybe 3, and you better find your 3 wins, like your 2 more wins in the next few weeks, because it's going to get a lot more difficult in the second half. Maybe Dallas crumbles, but everyone else that you're going to be playing in the second half of this season coming out of the bye, they're going to be much better football teams. We know Andy Dalton is going to start next week. When I think about Andy Dalton starting, when I think about the season, if we came into the season and we saw what we're seeing today and it was Bryce Young at the quarterback, I would actually feel pretty good, because I'm like, oh, it's the future of our team. Future of the team in place, and defense maybe not good, which we know. But you feel like the team was going somewhere. But now you've got Andy Dalton, and sure, I like Andy, but we're seeing competitive football. Maybe we bring Andy back for another year or 2, but then 2 or 3 years from now, it's the same thing. You're going to, okay, who's our quarterback? And maybe that's okay. Maybe now is the time, which we can see, we need to build out a defense. Injuries happen across the NFL. You got to find ways to win football games. You have to put your players in position. And so I do think Evero is out. I kind of said this, I don't know how many people listen, but I said it, I think like 2 weeks ago, that no matter what happens, whether it was really good, really bad, Dave Canales likely would have gotten his guy in here at the end of the season anyways. He's going to want his own, especially with Robert Saleh opening up. And I don't know that Saleh comes there. Probably goes out to San Francisco, gets back in his footing. Either way, I think Canales gets his guy, and I don't think he did it this year because it was too new. There were too many things happening. Evero's under contract. Evero was trying to interview elsewhere for coordinator positions, or at least teams wanted him to. I don't know how his resume is going to look coming out of this year. It's hard to imagine that any team wants to take him as a head coach. Because here's the thing, if you're going to come in with a resume that is what it is right now, what are you going to be telling a team where you're going to be the head coach when you battle this same situation, when you come up against this same adversity and you're not able to put together at least a competent defense, and you're going to be known for defense and you're taking over an NFL team as a head coach, if that's the case, it's not boding well for you. And I hate it. I mean, I think fans are very frustrated, which they should be. You should be able to score 20 points and be in a game, which we have. Now, we'll take a step back as we talk about this. Dave Canales is building the culture. At least I hope. It's what it seems like. I don't know how you can talk about building the culture having the number 3 running back in the NFL now, and that's Chuba Hubbard, in rushing yards. How are you not continuing to feed him? It seriously blows my mind how he talks such a big game, how our offensive line, through all of the adversity and injuries, is still playing well, not giving up sacks. And I know a lot of that's on Andy getting the ball out. But how are you looking at what you are seeing on the field? And I understand the play call, and we're really right now honing in on the Andy Dalton interception. Andy Dalton admitted that he should have checked the ball down. He took a shot, tried to make a play wasn't there. We didn't need a hero. We needed a game manager. That's all we needed in that situation, someone to manage the game. At the very least, you get 3 points there. And I know 3 points, so what? They would still been up by 5. We still would have had a tall task. It would have at least been a little more competitive. I mean, the Panthers were deflated after that interception. It hurt, but I understand calling it because you've ran the ball so well in that drive after drive, and then you had and I don't know why you abandon it until they prove that they can stop it. And you could see Chuba Hubbard coming alive on that drive. We've seen it a few times, and we abandon it, and I don't know why. I really don't. We try to get, I guess, out of our element. We overthink it. We keep running the ball. They're going to eventually stop us. And, yeah, I think the play before the pass, it was like a 2-yard gain. But I don't know, man. It is very frustrating. I'll tell you this, on the offensive side of the ball. It also, like, at this point, and I listened to the Panthers post-game radio show after. Anish Shroff is amazing. The guys on there were talking through, like, looking ahead. And they started dropping names like DJ Wonham. Do you get these guys healthy? A Barno, a Jewel, Jonathan Brooks. It may be too late. Like, we are already at the point at 1-5. And I'm not saying they should be pushing for a playoffs or anything, but, like, what's the point? Primarily Jonathan Brooks. If I'm the Panthers, I don't know that I put him out here this year. I maybe when we get closer to a year out, which is like November, possibly after the bye, once we know he's kind of in a groove, or maybe not even then, not in a groove, but ready to go. Maybe you put Brooks out there, get him in for a few games, take him out, let him sit the rest of the year. I think the bigger question, and I know fans may or may not like it, is going to be like, at what point do we see Bryce? Because we've got to figure out. And I know, and I'm not saying fans who think that he's done, he's cooked. That's pretty clear. But I think at least for the sake of our sanity check and feeling like, okay, we can move on from him, I think he's going to have one more pass. And Andy Dalton will remain the quarterback probably up until the bye. I mean, if you go into the bye at 1-9, I mean, yeah. I mean, there's only so much. Do we think the Panthers are going to rattle off 4 wins in a row and be 5-5? It could happen, but based on what we're seeing in the NFL today, odds are not in their favor. I mean, at best, you're 5-5, 4-6, 3. I mean, I feel like they're likely to be closer to 2-8 or 3-7. That's giving them a lot. So maybe 2-8 going into the bye. Season is done at that point. And I think you will see Bryce Young. And that doesn't mean that Andy Dalton isn't going to be the quarterback for next year, the year after, whatever it is. But you at least know for a fact like what you feel about Bryce Young. The bad news in that situation kind of is you're past the trade deadline. So you're really talking about something that's going to have to happen in the offseason for a desperate team that wants to pick him up. And likely, I mean, it just feels closer to a Miami Dolphins type team that's like, oh, yeah, let's go get this guy. That's the other question that we're going to have, though, right now is around the state of this team and or if players are going to be moved coming up into the trade deadline. I don't think the Panthers should move off of it because, like, the players you're going to move figure out a contract for this guy to be here the next 3 or 4 years with Jonathan Brooks. If you need to, move Miles Sanders off into the offseason. You got a 1-2 punch with those guys. Just look at what Atlanta is doing now. It's a very similar model. And you talk about wanting to be a good running team. That's how you do it. But you have a Deontay Johnson, which sure, I mean, what are you going to get in return? Because, yeah, we know he's on his last year. What are you actually going to get back for him right now that would be meaningful? Same thing with Adam Thielen. It's a head scratcher for me to think about moving players that are actually productive. And on defense, who is it? JC Horn? That's it. There's nobody else. Nobody else is coming to pick up whatever we have on the defensive side of the ball, considering just how bad they've been playing. Chuba Hubbard, 18 carries for 92 yards. So close to another 100-yard game. Should have gotten it, but we got away from it. Dalton was 26 of 38, 221. Can we talk about the play of the receivers? One, Deontay Johnson, another good game, 6 for 78, 1 touchdown. Jatavian Sanders, rookie who struggled a little bit early with the drop, had 49 yards on 5 catches, his best game so far. Chuba Hubbard had 5 for 11. Jalen Coker, 3 for 30. Jalen Coker should continue to be elevated. And I'll say this, there's a lot of people that liked Jalen Coker. I wasn't like all in on him, but there was a group that was, and hats off to y'all for finding it and seeing it. He needs to get more snaps than Jonathan Mingo at this point. Jalen Coker could be your Adam Thielen replacement. Like, that's the model that I see. Doesn't matter what he is or who he's replacing. He needs to be out there because he's proven himself more in the short time that he's been here and been active. Xavier, how about Xavier, man? 3 for 23, the 1 touchdown, the jump ball. Why are we not throwing the jump ball to Xavier Legette earlier in the year versus Deontay Johnson? Like, it's a clear matchup advantage for Xavier. David Moore came to play quiet, 2 for 17. Miles, Mingo, talked about them. Ian Thomas had 3 targets. Not laughing at him. Here's the other thing I'll talk about. I will get into the comments in a section. Get into the comments in a second. Get into the comments section in a second. Special teams is straight up donkey crap. A lot of people talk about defense. Some people talk about offense. I like to talk about special teams. We are pathetic. We are absolutely pathetic. Like week after week, it's something new. We can't cover 1 week, whether it's on punt coverage. This has been a theme. And I know you're running with, again, those practice squad type second string guys in a lot of these positions, but you got to do better. That's blocked punt / return with the penalty. I mean, they put him down inside like the 20-something for the Panthers. Like, that was easy money. People want to talk about the defense. Was there a chance that the Falcons still drove? Yes. But I'd rather have the Falcons at the 50-yard line or beyond. What really ticked me off with that whole situation was the special teams unit, the punt team, not knowing instinctively to down the ball. So they all just let it go. The ball's sitting there, and then you have someone from the Falcons pick it up and run and gain an extra 10, and on top of the holding. It was prime field position because no one told them, hey, in this situation, like as a coach, if your job is special teams, with every unit, you should be talking about every situation, every rule, anything that could pop up. You don't have to go out and practice it, but you at least need to verbalize it so that when this thing happens during the game, you're prepared. Players are prepared. They know what to do. They didn't know what to do. They were all looking at each other, staring at the ball, picks it up, runs it. I was like, that's pathetic, dude. How many times? I just like, you've got to coach the guys up. Speaking of just stuff that, of course, didn't go our way, and I mean, it was an early omen. The pass that Ray McLeod catches, that was like a deflection on third down. It's a stop right into the hands of McLeod. Should have been a stop, and I was like, oh my god, this is the way the game goes. One positive out of all this was the challenge. I did not expect us to get that challenge overturned. Sure enough, it did. And here's the thing: when I go to blaming the offense, you cannot start in Falcons territory at like what was the 41-yard line and only score a field goal. You drove down 36 plus yards, whatever it is on that drive, coming away with 3 points. You have to score touchdowns off turnovers in the NFL if you want to be a serious football team. And when we talk about bend, don't break approach, red zone efficiency, Falcons were 4 of 8 in the red zone. So, like, kind of came alive a little bit. Not great. And the Panthers were 2 for 3. Third down efficiency was pretty similar. I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, Algier 105, Robinson 95. So they combined for 200 yards, 5.8 and 6.3 per carry. Chuba Hubbard 5.1 per carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. Coming into this game, Falcons had 1 rushing touchdown all year. They have 3 against the Panthers, and it's just talking about the defense, man. I just don't know where, and it's going to get rough, man. We're going to have to watch this week after week after week. The only way this team can win is if the offense plays a perfect game, scores on almost every drive. I will tell you, from a defensive side of the ball, like looking at the defense, if we can at least get tied or maybe have the lead for a little bit, like we can be competitive. And I mean, that's all you can ask. You can't hurt yourself with your own turnovers and or not converting, scoring points when you need to. It's a very, very tough day being a Panthers fan because, I mean, there really is not a lot of hope right now. That's part of the reason why I'm not changing teams, but part of the reason I'm looking to expand content because I just can't do this crap. It's no knock on the Panthers. I appreciate y'all folks. Like the channel's always going to happen. I'm going to keep this thing rolling. We're going to keep growing. Officially monetized, which I appreciate all the folks that are on here and those that listen to the podcast. But like, yeah, I got to find something else. So something that's a little more positive for me, man, because this sucks, dude. It sucks to get on here. I kid you not. I got a good buddy, Austin, neighbor, and he will text me at the beginning of every game, and it's all, we're doing good, things are going well, and then the text, they just die off. It just die. My mother-in-law texted me, I think at I don't know what point of the game it was, but it was when it was relatively close, and she said something like, "Oh, this is a good game." And then, like, right after, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so." It was like a few minutes later. I don't even remember the sequence of events. She was like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "Oh, don't worry. This is normal. This is every single Sunday." Speaking of every single Sunday, and folks, I live 3.5 hours away. The odds of me traveling and making it down and seeing games, I'll be lucky to go to a game during the year. So I always kind of say it with a grain of salt in a way because I'm not there. But watching from afar and just knowing what I grew up seeing on TV, the attendance, and maybe that's part of the message that you're sending. And I don't know what the message is because, like, I don't think you need a coaching change, but I mean, top down, it starts top down. We are in year 7, 6.5, whatever this is, of this experiment, and it's just not getting better. And there's not a lot of optimism on the outside, man. Like looking out beyond this season. I just said it when I recorded, like, this freaking sucks, dude. It does. And as a fan, I can see why you want to check out, why you don't want to watch this. For me, it's like, okay, this is the second year that I've been doing this, second season. I haven't made it in the second year, but second season. And at this point in time, I understand the flow of how this thing's going to work. I'd love to see a miracle, but knowing like where we're headed, this is it. And I'm like, oh God, now I've got to turn my attention to mock drafts. I've got to turn my attention to likely what are we going to be doing with the defensive coordinator, who's going to be back. That's not fun. Like, I want to be talking about football games and us playing football during the season. I know in the offseason I got to talk about all that stuff and spend months and months. But during the season, like, we still got, what is this, October, November, really half of October, November, and December, 2.5 months left, bleeding into January, maybe 3 full months of football. And I'm already going to have to, like, okay, let's pack it up, go to the house, rinse and repeat, go through the motions, because it's like there's nothing else that I can tell you that'll make you feel good, make me feel good. Speaking of which, I don't know as far as other content what that's going to look like yet. I'm still brainstorming. I still do a lot for this show. The podcast, one live stream, film breakdown, one additional podcast, and a preview episode. I'm spending probably 4 or 5 hours of just recording time on this show per week. It's really a little less than that, but close to it. So for me, it's like, how am I going to pivot into additional content? If you're wondering, like, what the heck I'm going to talk about, it's probably a lot of ACC sports and or regional North Carolina, possibly South Carolina stuff, which I don't know. Would not, and I know I'm rambling, and I will get back into the chat, talk Panthers, but it would likely not be on this channel because I know how the YouTube algorithm works, or at least enough of how it works to know that I can't really blend those two things. So I have to get a new show name, do all that fun stuff. But hey, I already did it once. Blueprint is there. So anyways, all right. I'm going to shut up and check the chat. If anybody else is enduring the pain of the Carolina Panthers, there are a few folks on here, so we'll catch up with you now. Mark Marcos says, I would rather be competitive. So way back, for those that are listening, I asked, would you rather be competitive and lose or just getting blown out? At least I'm into the game. I don't want us to watch and get blown out. Yeah. I think going into it, if you knew every single game you were going to get blown out, yeah, you wouldn't even, I would definitely not watch that. So I do agree with that. Dixon said, we are cooked. Sign Johnson and Horn and draft all defense. I agree with you, man. We are so freaking cooked. It's not even fun. It's not. Evero has got to go. Don't care when, now or at the end of the season, but he's got to go. I agree. I think he's gone. It's tough, man. It is because like I do like him and there was promise, but it's not panning out. Ryan says, why can't we run the ball? That's a great question. I don't know. It'd be great if we could run the ball a bit more. There has to be a reason they are scared. It's weird. I don't know how you can be so successful, how you can talk about running the ball, how that's going to be your identity. You can see it working. I don't know if it's analytics, if it's just outsmarting yourself, if it's a mixture of those, but it does feel like for whatever reason, we see it working. You're averaging 5 yards per carry. Chuba Hubbard is not getting tackled for yards for loss. And I know you have to pass the ball. Like, we're not going to run a wishbone triple option, but I don't know why you don't run it more. Really think players are not coming back next year. Sorry, and you were saying, yeah, players looking for future contracts. Yeah, I mean, I will say culture-wise, and again, maybe we use that word lightly, that I think Dave Canales has probably instilled a decent amount of culture. It's early, but at least a little bit. But yeah, I fully agree. Like if you're an available player that's halfway decent, there's a good chance you're gonna, at least going to look around, especially when it comes to money. Players that are happy and not hostages. I got that right, man. No doubt about that. Oh man, don't want to keep anybody here. Doesn't want to be here. Earlier we talked about Jalen Coker and Jonathan Mingo. I agree with this, man. Undrafted free agent Jalen Coker is better than Jonathan Mingo. It's early, and I want to see him continue to grow. So maybe that's one of the bright sides. NW Key. I'm not really sure what to think about Carolina. I miss the Matt Rule years. Oh my god, bringing up the Matt Rule years. That is a strong take, but you know what, man? During those years, we were what, 5 and whatever, 12, 5 and 11, or whatever the records were. Even the post Rule, even the post like Steve Wilkes era there for a little bit, competitive. I mean, different, and we had playmakers. We did ship Cam off, but I will agree. It's definitely get you down in the dumps, man. There was a little bit of hope. That's what Marco said. Marco said Matt Rule was guaranteed 5 wins at least. Can you believe that? 5 wins. It's all this team wants. 5. We had it good. Those were the days. 5-win Panthers. Phil Snow was a better defensive coordinator than Evero. Yeah. We were talking about number of wins left. Yeah. It's not many. I kind of agree with you. I think maybe 3 max for the rest of the year, but it's hard to imagine. Hard to imagine that. Tar Heels, Gamecocks, and Panthers. Yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother game, man. North Carolina. And one serious note for North Carolina fans, man. Tylee Kraft passed away. I don't know how many people follow college football. He had cancer diagnosis, lung cancer. It was the game to honor him on Saturday. It was very emotional because I think leading into the game, no one knew that he had already passed. He passed before the game. They honor him at the game, and you see Mac Brown hugging his mom for like 2 minutes. Mac Brown did not know that that Tylee had already passed away. I guess they just didn't want to, put a damper over everything that was going on. But she embraced for like 2 minutes, and like it was. I think after the game, Mac was like he knew something had probably happened, which is sad, man. Players got to say goodbye to him. Tough times, man. I mean, I think he was 22 or 23 years old. But as a fan of the team, though, for North Carolina, yeah, it's rough. 3-4. I mean, they gave up a 60-plus yard run to Georgia Tech after battling back, man. It was like, are you kidding me? With 16 seconds to go. Gamecocks to Alabama. Oh, my God. Thought for sure Gamecocks were going to pull that one off, too. Couldn't do it. And then, yeah, throwing the Panthers, that's just like icing on the cake. Yeah, I agree. Steve Wilkes, man. Maybe that's why the Panthers can't win or never will be able to win. They gave up on the coach that was here to instill culture. Wouldn't it? I mean, Steve Wilkes would never. I mean, I don't say never. I mean, maybe. Wouldn't it be something, though? And I want to see Steve Wilkes as a head coach. But if there was a way to get him back as a DC, I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I'm spitballing. I know he's in Charlotte helping out the Charlotte 49ers, so he's around. I'll make it'll happen. Would be nice. He did go 6-6, competitive. Well, anyways, folks, that is going to do it for tonight's stream. I went way longer than expected, but appreciate y'all tuning in as always. And new podcast will be coming out shortly. Y'all have a good night.